Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
Hey, this is Geoff Calkins. This is the Daily Memphian's Memphis Tiger podcast. I'm going to be hosting it today. But, you know, one of the great things is we have new beat writers. Well, sort of new. Steve Johnson has slid over from football to basketball. And Frank Bonner has joined us from Oklahoma, where he is and is going to be covering the Memphis Tiger football team. We're recording this on 9/01 day, so it's a perfect day to be doing that. Steve's a native. Steve, I mentioned this on my radio show this morning, Steve. I don't know that I've ever felt more optimistic about Memphis sports just broadly. If you take where the Grizzlies are, and I know this isn't a Grizzlies podcast, where the Tiger basketball team is, and even the just sort of assumed expectations of Memphis football. You grew up here. Can you remember it ever being sort of better than this?
Not really, because if the Tigers basketball team was up, even I was around for the D'Angelo days and whatnot. I think those teams were okay. They made a bowl games and whatnot, but just, you know, you have high expectations for the Tigers football team. And people have been kind of DMing me all weekend. Final Four buzz for the basketball team, playoffs for the Grizzlies. So I can't remember a time where the kind of the three major teams were all coming into a season with high expectations. So I think it's a wonderful time to be a sports fan in Memphis. Absolutely.
And Frank comes over. He was covering Oklahoma State just before the Big 12 breaks up. So that was smart to get over here, stay safe and sound before the Big 12. What's the best thing you've eaten since you've been in town?
Best thing I've eaten. Well, Gibson's donuts are great. So
is that right?
Yeah.
What do you got? The basic glazed?
Yeah, the glaze. The donut shop right next to Gus's Chicken, and I like Gus's Chicken a lot. So.
So what happened was you just happened to be in the neighborhood getting Gus's Chicken, and you slid over and got some Gibson's donuts while you were there. Yeah,
this was when I was going back and forth looking for houses, and we just ran into Gus's Chicken, and there goes a donut shop.
And there's a donut shop. Yeah, that's the way it works
spots.
Here. We didn't get this fat by accident.
Yeah. Don't judge me, but I've never had Gibson's before. I just want to.
You've never had Gibson's?
I've never had.
Still never
before.
had Gibson's.
Never had it. Never had it.
Well, you know, it's funny. To me, that there's a nice vibe in there. Pete's a happy place, and occasionally he'll throw you a free donut, so that's nice too. All right, let's. Memphis football opens this week, obviously, against Nicholls State. So let's start with Memphis football, and Steve is the former beat writer on the team. So obviously, the thing that everyone's talking about is the quarterback situation. Who do you think Frank is going to be under center when this season begins?
My guess is Grant Gunnell. I know we talked on the podcast last week that I assumed that it would be Grant Gunnell and Seth Henigan as the top two, which the depth chart shows that. But, Silverfield said Gunnell's a full go in terms of his injuries, and so I think that he would be the go-to guy with the experience that he has from Arizona.
Why not just name him then?
I don't know
if it's mystifying to me. Like, what is he? Are you trying to hide it from Nicholls State?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's a coach's ploy. I had this similar situation over at Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy when he was trying to name a quarterback between Spencer Sanders and Drew Brown a couple years ago, and we didn't know until like an hour before kickoff who was be starting. And I don't know if
were they playing a meaningful opponent? Do you recall? Like, in other words, you get it. The last time they did this, they were playing Mississippi. It was 20 years ago. They were playing Mississippi State in the first game. And I understand why you don't want to necessarily say if it's going to be Travis Englund or whoever it is. When it's Nicholls State, who cares? I'm no offense to Nicholls State. Steve, why do you think, you covered him for a year, why do you think we don't know who the starting quarterback is?
Well, I'll be interested to see if you agree. In my opinion, Ryan has always been a little more close to the vest, maybe in terms of what he does and things like that. Me personally, I agree with you. If Gunnell is the guy, then I don't really see the advantage of putting the or right there, and it it just makes you wonder, is Seth Hennigan that good that he's able to, come in as an early enrollee and kind of maybe hawk down a guy that has played some games and did fairly well with Arizona. So I think it brings more questions than answers. So or maybe is it a situation where the injury that he suffered earlier in camp was a little more serious than Ryan let on, which I definitely think Ryan would. So I'm not really sure what advantages come with it, but maybe there's something going on behind the scenes that kind of is behind the decision.
I tend to think it's what you said. It's just he's buttoned up. He doesn't tell you things unless he has to, right?
Absolutely.
So that's just how he rolls. And so, like, do I really think there's a competition this week? No, I don't think. I think they know who's going to start. And so if they just didn't, it's fine. And I don't think it indicates, and if either of you have, obviously we haven't seen practice, but I don't get the sense it indicates that there's a problem. Do you get that? Like, it doesn't actually make me worry much. In a perfect world, would you have liked someone to grab it and run away with it? Sure. But I actually think they do have at least two guys who could be the answer at quarterback, Frank.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time you've seen this in college football. You see quarterback happen. So I don't think it's an indication that it's a problem. If you've got two quarterbacks who are worthy to be a starter, I think it's more of a plus than a negative, as long as you don't get indecisive in choosing who your quarterback is. That's when it could be a problem if you're, 2-3 games into the season and you're still trying to give both quarterback game reps and not get them in a rhythm. That's when it's an issue. But if they can mitigate all of that, I think they'll be fine.
To me, the most intriguing part of the two deep that was released was at running back. I gather, Steve, you called this last week. Did you call this in the podcast last week?
Yeah, I did. We were talking about breakout players, and I figured there was going to be a running back. Brandon Thomas was a guy that had a great spring. He got listed as a RB number 1. So I'm a little surprised to see him number 1 at the depth chart. I figured he was going to be somewhere in the two deep, but he had a great spring. He was arguably probably the top running back in the spring game. So it seems like he really kept that momentum up, and now he's going to be the starter at least one of those running back spots.
My thought about it is that if you look at one of the disappointments last year was we had gotten used to electric production from the running back spot, whether it was Darrell Henderson or Tony Pollard or Antonio Gibson. It had been Kenny Gainwell. It had been a succession of, if you give them 4 yards, they'll take 10 or 12. And here it was, if there's a hole for 4 yards, they'll get 4 yards. And a lot of times there wasn't a hole. It was obvious they weren't as explosive. So to me, the fact that there's a new guy who sort of emerged is a huge positive, and I have great hope for it. I don't know. Thoughts on the running back situation, Frank?
Yeah, and what I'm curious to see, and Steve can probably speak on this because I haven't seen much of practices, the running backs coach said they're looking for their bell cows, what he used. They're, their running back who can be their so-called feature back and then to take, the brunt. And I don't know how much of that Brandon Thomas can do. Like, can he shoulder the workload of being a bell cow? That's what I'm interested to see, because you have a number of different running backs who you can plug in, but you do need that one guy who's going to be your go-to guy. And so I'm curious to see if he can be that for them.
Yeah, they started at 3 or 4 different guys last year. Asa Martin started, Weaver started different games. Drake Clark was the initial starter. I think even Colin Watkins might have gotten a game or two. So they started off fine, but they just hit that kind of that middle stretch. There was one point, I think they went 5 or 6 straight games where they didn't top 100 yards rushing, let alone 200, which is kind of what you've been accustomed to. So from what I saw in the spring game, Brandon Thomas runs hard. He runs tough. He's young. I'm not sure if he's that type of back like a Gainwell or a Henderson just yet, but I've only seen one glimpse of him. So I think if you can just find that guy, even if you're not getting those chunk plays, just the fact that you have somebody that you can turn to and say, here's 20 carries, here's 25, I think will help the offense, because at the end of that season last year, the running game was almost non-existent.
Yeah. What else in terms of the two deep leapt out at you? It was interesting to see some of the players who weren't on it. The big tackle from Michigan State, not in the two deep. The receiver transferring over from Arkansas, Memphis kid, not in the two deep. I'll let you both, as you both have it in front of you. What else leaps out at you? A position of interest that you find striking?
Well, one name that's glaring is Kylan Watkins is not on the two deep. And talking to him in fall camp, it seemed like he he takes pride in being that running back that can get out in the passing game. And so, I thought,
and he's explosive.
Yeah, and so I thought that he would make the 2 deep and be in the mix in that. And so I'm wondering what's going on there and why he's not.
You had heard he might be banged up, Steve?
Yeah, somebody told me Colin Watkins is banged up, so we'll see where his status is next week. I didn't hear how serious it was though.
And what leaps out to you, Steve?
To me, Greg Rupin, true freshman corner.
They love him.
Yeah.
They love him.
Yeah, he was kind of one of those first kids in the 2021 class that kind of spurned some of those big SEC schools. I know Vanderbilt was one school after him. He's listed in the 2 deep, and I gotta imagine when they go to their 3-corner set, they'll have Jacoby Francis at the nickel, Julian Barnett, the one Michigan State transfer that is on the 2 deep, and Rubin out there. And for a true freshman to play, I think that's huge, and I think he's kind of could be one of those cornerstones of the defense in the future because he looked really good in the spring game. I believe he had an interception as well too. And
to wrap this up here, well, 2 things. One is, what do we expect for attendance? You Frank, probably don't have a real sense because you don't. Something to be the first Memphis game you'll have been to. What do you expect, Steve? And of course, you covered them during a COVID year, so it's weird too. I think it would be smaller than the typical open because A, COVID is still out there, and B, I don't sense a lot of buzz heading into this game. Maybe it's people take their excellence for granted as a program now, but I don't. It'll be nice to have it will be lovely to have the fans back, to have the Tiger Walk back. I mean, it's going to mean a lot. And Frank, I'd suggest to you, go walk up and down Tiger Lane and just get a sense of it because it's a nice scene there. It's become a good game day atmosphere. But I don't know. I don't expect Ryan was joking about 50,000 at his coach's show. You heard that, Frank? And I don't imagine he'll get 30. But
it's tough.
Between 20 and 30, what do you think?
I mean, in a perfect world, you could at least get 40. You're coming off a pretty good season. There should be some excitement about this team, but I would probably lean to where your projections maybe closer to 30. I think it would be a little bit disappointing if you couldn't.
You don't think you'll crack 30? You think that you think they will crack 30, 32?
I would say that's the line. I would say that as the line.
The line is 30.
The line is 30.
You taking the over or the under?
I'm gonna go 31.
You're going to go 31. 31. All right, we'll absolve Frank this one because he hasn't been here before. I'll take the slight under, but I'll hope I'm wrong.
Yep.
In terms of wins, 8. I'll set the over or under at 7.5.
The games that are going to decide that, I think for sure, are going to be Mississippi State. You go to UCF, and you get SMU. I think those how they do, they go like 2-1, 1-2, or a worst case scenario, go 0-3. We'll kind of decide if this is a team that can, and the quarterback as well too.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
we've been spoiled. We've had great quarterbacking, and we'll see how it goes. All right, I want to turn the page a little bit, and Penny Hardaway and Rasheed Wallace spoke yesterday. And before we get to anything else, Steve, you created a stir on the interview because you asked Rasheed if he was hanging out at the cigar bar. You obviously had an inside scoop. What cigar bar? What can you tell us about Rasheed Wallace and the cigar bar?
I don't have the exact cigar bar, but somebody did tell me they just saw him outside, and I thought this was just a totally perfect, just a Rasheed Memphis story, just outside, just smoking some cigars with some of his friends, some of the older guys in Memphis. So I was like, I had to ask to make sure it just wasn't social media rumor,
right.
But I saw it.
I wanted to confirm that he was in fact outside smoking a cigar at the cigar bar.
That's just the perfect intro story.
What did you think of Rasheed?
I think he was Rasheed down from the fitted cap, from the cocked fitted cap.
The cocked cap was funny.
Just from his you could tell he was being authentic. There wasn't really coached up speaking. His quote about getting back on, getting your what on the post. I love that.
I believe he said, "Get your ass down on the post." Yes, right, exactly.
So he said that. So I'm a younger guy, but I kind of like that old school feel, and I think just for some of these players, especially the big man, I think they kind of got that mentor, and you kind of need that coach that's going to be if Penny's the quote unquote father, you kind of need that cool uncle that can kind of be that go between those two. So I think the players are going to love him. I think the city is definitely going to embrace him.
And he seemed genuinely enthusiastic too. Like you could sense real enthusiasm for being here.
Yeah, you could tell like he really loves working with the kids. I don't know how much he cares about some of this other stuff, but I think the fact he spoke about, helping these guys get paid, what do you say? It would be an injustice if he took this basketball knowledge with him to the grave.
He said it would be an injustice if he took all this knowledge to the grave. Exactly right. The basketball gods would not be pleased.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like he's just here for the players. He's not really here for some of the notoriety that's sure to come with it. So I think just when you have a genuine person there that's just really there to help out the kids, I think that's big for the program.
Do you believe in the Amani Bates at point guard storyline here?
I do. I definitely think he'll get the start at least. They have we're still waiting on the schedule, which we might touch on later. But I got to imagine they have a manageable start to the season. If he can pull it off, I say why not? I'm sure the Tigers will do this whole positionless thing where maybe Lester will come down, run a couple plays. If Timberlake's out there, maybe he'll come down and run a couple plays. But I don't think it's a crazy idea to say we're going to put the ball in the hands of our most talented player and see what he can do with it. He's done it a little bit on the circuit, so it'll be an experiment for sure. But if it works, then this team is going to be even more special than we probably already think it could be.
I thought the only thing that was ominous was asked about Earl Timberlake. Penny said, yeah, he's really looking forward to getting on the court. Now, maybe he meant looking forward to getting on the court and playing games, but if you take him literally, he's not on the court now. He's looking forward to getting on the court. I think that's an indication, or maybe that shoulder issue is persisting and might be getting in the way. Your thoughts?
Well, he said on different occasions, once to us, and I believe some national reporter also tweeted out that Earl is 100. He's ready to go. He's healthy.
He said he's cleared to play. That's a little different than that he is playing and crushing it or whatever.
They're very core down here with details like that. Both coaches. So it's. I'm not sure. I guess I had to look into it a little bit more. I just kind of took it as like he's just kind of eager and hungry to get actually back on the floor because he only played 7 games last year.
Well, and he could have meant that. It's one of the problems with these Zoom interviews is that you can't really follow up in the way that you wanted to.
You want him healthy though, especially if he's supposed to be this defender that that everybody says he is.
Tough guy.
He's a tough guy. So you need another guy like that. So. Hopefully he's healthy, but I guess we'll find out very soon once they start practicing.
You mentioned the schedule. What's the holdup?
Well, Penny has been kind of just harping on they want to get another Power 5, Quad 1 type of team to come here to Memphis. He even said yes for that they were pitching home and homes. Hey, you come here, we'll go there next year. So, I've been seeing a lot of the top teams just every day somebody's releasing their full non-conference schedule. So some of these teams are actually full. And I got to imagine right now playing Memphis, trying to set up a game to play Memphis in August is probably a lot different than it was in May when they were kind of good. Now it's potentially.
I had actually heard that Arkansas was willing to come and Penny doesn't want them, but I don't know whether that. I literally just and that goes under the category of total scuttlebutt.
I think Arkansas, that would be a tremendous series. They're a really good program right now. I mean, it's right, 3 or 4 hours away?
There used to be this deal where Memphis coaches didn't want Arkansas to come in because they didn't want to give them, quote-unquote, access to recruiting. And so there was always some issues there. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, people are looking forward to it. They're looking forward to Memphis Madness already. And so it should be a fun time. Okay, now, Steve, you're a native, and you've been back now a year. Frank's new. Give him some advice. Give him some Memphis advice.
Oh man. Well, you've already kind of taken to the food.
He's got the Gibson's donuts and the Gus's knocked out. Where do you eat when you eat out? Where do you eat more than anywhere else?
When I feel like spending a little money, I'll probably go to Coastal Fish. I'm on the east side of town, kind of near the Germantown type of area, so that's kind of where I hang out. Memphis is just like any other city, man. If you just go, there are some areas you got to avoid, of course. That's anywhere.
Collierville's bad. You want no part of Collierville,
At night, you actually.
Things, not after 11.
Yeah, at night, you might
don't go faster than 30 in Germantown. Yeah. Isn't that's one of the rules, right?
Germantown, Bartlett, Collierville.
They'll pull you over.
Yes.
Bartlett is where I'm at.
They're all good. I'm joking. Bartlett's a good place. And Collierville, of course, it's a good place, too.
I would just say there's a lot more to this city besides Beale Street, so just make sure, especially if you're in Bartlett, Collierville, Germantown. I think Memphis has kind of an underrated park scene, so if you're into that type of stuff, I would definitely get out here. Park scene, yeah.
Like what?
There's some amazing park in Collierville that has a quote-unquote secret beach, if you know how to get there or something like that, a beach, and it's like has its own creek. I won't say river, kind of a big creek.
I've heard about this place. We're gonna have to start having a park podcast, but we do not have one now. We do at the Daily Memphian, however, as we wrap this up, have a whole bunch of other podcasts. Jennifer Biggs, of course, hosts Sound Bites. Eric Barnes, Sidebar, Bill Dries on politics, Chris Harrington and Drew Hill every single week with the Grizzlies podcasts. You can listen to all of your podcasts at dailymemphian.com. Of course, can also find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and catch us next week.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.